welcome to those of you here in the sanctuary and those who are viewing us online. I'm Chris Monk, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Flint. We are a progressive community in which people are free to be themselves without fear. If you would like more information about Unitarian Universalism or our congregation, please feel free to talk to one of our ministers, and their contact information can be found at unuflint.org. If you are a visitor today and would like to receive our weekly email newsletter, just fill out the information card in the seat backs behind you. Look like this. And you will put your email down and you will get all the information about what's going on every week. Our announcements are on the back of your order of service, but I'd like to highlight a few things. Our final coffee concert at night is tonight at 5 p.m. featuring Flint musical mainstay, Sweets Willie T. Admission is free and snacks are provided. If you haven't attended one of our Joy Brewer coffee concerts, this would be a good time to start. And our prelude this morning is a clip from last month's concert. That will give you an idea of what happens at our coffee concerts. And if you haven't noticed, we could not find a pianist today, but we're going to be fine. Bonnie's going to handle it. And between Bonnie and a few video clips, we'll be fine. Another announcement, Ray Rusk brought this to my attention. We talked about this, is to have your cell phone on during the service, but the volume off. And that way you can say hello to those who are viewing us online. Another announcement is that the work party for the grounds is not going to be September 9th, like the email update said, but it's going to be next week on the 26th. John and Raina will be out of town on the 9th, so it's next week. Now that is Crim Day, so prepare to find a route that you can get here on. Now to light our chalice. We light this chalice in deep respect for the mystery and holiness of life, in honor and gratitude for those who have gone before, with love and compassion for those who dwell among us, and with hope and faith for the generations to come. Please join me in reciting our covenant. Recognizing the richness of diversity, the beauty and wonder of shared worship, and the transforming power of love and service, we gather as a sacred, intentional community to freely seek knowledge and truth, to celebrate the fullness of life, and by our actions to increase goodness and justice.
Holy and beautiful is the custom which brings us together, to face our ideals, to remember our loved ones, to give thanks, to make confession, to offer forgiveness, to be enlightened, and to be strengthened. Through this quiet hour breathes the worship of the ages, the cathedral music of history. In faith, 3 guests attend: love, justice, and reason. Let our hearts prepare them a place. We're going to sing a song that a former member of our church, Aimee Loubert, wrote, and she asked me if I would put some music to it, and we kind of collaborated on that and figured it out. It's called "You Are Welcome Here," and if you are willing and able and desire to stand, please stand with me and sing along. You are welcome here, wherever you may be. You are welcome here. May you find peace. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. Wherever you have been, you are welcome here. May you find peace. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. Whatever you believe, you are welcome here. May you find peace. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. Whomever you may love, you are welcome here. May you find peace. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. How big or small your dreams, you are welcome here. May you find peace. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. May you find peace. You are welcome here. May you find peace. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Bonnie. After our meditation words and silence, please feel free to light candles of joy or concern up front or in the rear. And you may also write in the book, of course, so that we can print those in our weekly email update. Join me in a spirit of meditation as I read the words that are attributed to Jesus of Nazareth in 4 different ancient texts. Most scholars agree This is most certainly Jesus talking to us in what we call the Sermon on the Mount. Other places in the Bible, not so much. This is Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 through 45. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Let us be still and silent. going to continue now with the meditation. We're going to sing meditation on breathing, meditation on breath, breathing. I was right. Okay. Well, we might.
In 1933, during the Great Depression, there were 13 million unemployed people in America. Many of them homeless, hungry, and shattered by feelings of hopelessness. Dorothy Day, a young and talented journalist, decided to use her writing skills and her reverence for the poor to fight that poverty. Fight poverty in a land of plenty, controlled by a system that protected rich people who often abused their workers. Like many other religious social reformers, Dorothy Day was empowered not by Jesus the Almighty, but by the humble Jesus who put poor people first. A friend and biographer wrote of Dorothy Day, "She drew inspiration from this century's poor, descendants, she never forgot, of the humble people Jesus attended, the insulted, the humiliated." She chose to spend her life with such people, trying to be of help to them, learning from them. Hers was a hands-on politics, promoting workers and women's rights and socialism. She had little use for the bureaucracy of the modern state. She fed thousands from her own kitchen table and from her houses of hospitality. Near the end of her life, when asked how she hoped they would remember her, she said humbly, "Well, I hope they will remember that I tried to make good coffee for them and good soup. I've enjoyed getting to know them. They have been good teachers. You listen to them, hear of the troubles they've faced, and you realize how much courage they have." She had sought to live in a community of people devoted to the moral teachings of the Hebrew prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, and Micah, and of course, Jesus of Nazareth. She wanted to be remembered not institutionally. She laughed about the Catholic Church wanting to make her a saint, but as a humble person of faith who tried her best to live in accordance with the biblical teachings, especially from those of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. So she toiled as the editor of the Catholic Worker newspaper for 40 years, calling for justice for the poor. She faced the hatreds of millions for her socialist and pacifist sentiments. But yet, near the end of her life, She just hoped she would be remembered for serving good coffee and good food to poor people. 7 years after her death, Pope Francis called her one of the 4 great Americans, along with Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., and Thomas Merton.
Just as I am, but there were some constrictions on who they would accept, it seemed like. So I think not Alicia Keys, but Summer Osborne wrote this song, and it's just who you are. You're worthy, and that's the point that she was trying to make, I think, in this song. I am here, I am whole as I am. So please sing along. The words are going to be up there for you, okay? And if you want to stand up, if you want to dance, go ahead. I am here, I am whole as I am. I am safe, I am loved as I am. I am grateful and I'm free, and I'm as perfect as can be. I am here, I am whole as I am. Nothing can illuminate the darkness like a serenade. Nothing can make peace like a song. Got a ways to go, but then we're closer than we've ever been. So let's walk together on and on. I am here, I am whole as I am. I am safe, I am loved as I am. I am grateful and I'm free, and I'm as perfect as can be. I am here, I am whole as I am. I propose a family that looks a lot like you and me, including all the people that we love. Then we'll take a photograph of everybody as they laugh, put it in a book entitled Us. I am here, I am whole as I am. I am safe, I am loved as I am. I am grateful and I am free, and I'm as perfect as can be. I am here, I am whole as I am. May seem just like a song, may seem just like a thought,
but it will soon take hold, become a truth that's taught for generations, generations, generations. I am here, I am whole as I am. I am safe, I am loved as I am. I am grateful and I'm free. I'm as perfect as can be. I am here, I am whole as I am. I am here, let that sink in. I am whole as I am. Good singing.
I need to begin with an important announcement. I think everyone here should know about a small but important mystery downstairs in our big kitchen, as it affects all of us. Now, there's no immediate danger or anything like that, and this mystery is not a really good, juicy ghost story, nothing like that, so I don't want to build it up too much. And yes, I must say, first of all, I admit I have an overdeveloped sense of mystery. But downstairs, when you, let me see if I've got a sample here somewhere. I did. When you open up some of our kitchen cabinets, you'll see it on the screen there, you find stacks and stacks of usually unused dishes, upon which is ornately imprinted First Congregational Church. Now, yes, I know, and you know as well, that I have a low bar for what constitutes a good mystery. But if you're a person who lived the history of those plates, or an odd person like me who is obsessed with American church history, then you already know some of the story of those dishes. And in knowing the story, you appreciate the drama and the love and the hate and all of the good church potlucks too that you know those plates have seen. If you don't know that history, you look at the dishes and say, what the heck is this old stuff? Some young visitor helping with a potluck meal might guess incorrectly that our church used to be called the First Congregational Church, but we got mad about something, changed our name, lifted the dishes, and left. A logical deduction. A full explanation, one that shows the drama behind a stack of dishes, is one that I think contains a life-giving lesson for each of us in this church as well. I know, it sounds like a lot to expect from some old dishes. But it's a lesson that is also found on a larger stage in the story of Dorothy Day, an American angel of justice and compassion. So, old dishes, Dorothy Day, somehow connected? I think so. And it's true, the answers to many important questions are right there before us, carefully stored in the precious, precious lessons of history. We just have to read the lessons and the history honestly. Dorothy Day was born in 1897, and when she came of age in the 20s and the 30s, the world was in many ways just like it is right now. A famous preacher, Harry Emerson Fosdick, was saying you could be a Christian and not believe in the virgin birth. Religion had become more about healing society's ills with its social gospel movement. Women and the working poor and people of color, and even a few very brave LGBTQ Americans, they were all speaking up for themselves, but they also needed a champion. This was 100 years ago in the Roaring 20s and also during the Depression in the 30s. And the need for champions for the oppressed was great, as it always is. And all the better if the champion could write, and Dorothy could write. She was the well-educated daughter of a well-known newspaper editor, and at the age of 20, she was already a committed socialist, writing for many socialist newspapers. Like many Americans, then and now, she looked at the results of capitalism and started wondering if there wasn't some other way. It seemed the working people were simply pawns to be sacrificed in the game of life. But when she was 30 years old, she found her union-building activism was missing something. And following years of doubt and indecision, in 1933, she joined the Roman Catholic Church. Her fellow freedom fighters were mostly non-Christian, nonviolent, agnostic anarchists. They could not figure her out. How can Dorothy be a good Catholic Christian and a good socialist at the same time? What kind of religious person is this? It was a fair question, because her early writings often sounded just plain angry, not religious in the common sense of the word. In 1932, thousands of hungry, unemployed people, organized by the Communist Party, drove to Washington, D.C. to show their strength. It was called the Hunger March, and Dorothy went with them. She wrote in the socialist newspaper, The Commonweal, "It does not matter that the victory won was only that of marching to the Capitol. To those unarmed marchers who for 2 days and 2 cold nights lived and slept on an asphalt street with no water, no fires, no sanitary facilities, with the scantiest of food, surrounded by hysteria in the shape of machine guns, gas guns, tear and nauseous gas bombs in the hands of a worn and fretted police force, egged on by a bunch of Red Scare ghouls in the shape of newspaper men and photographers. To these marchers, the victory was a real one. They had achieved their purpose just with their witness." It seems Dorothy was religious after all, because she was writing as if she were the reincarnation of the Hebrew prophet Isaiah. Isaiah and Jeremiah and Micah, and 800 years later, Jesus the Nazarene. All were Jews who railed against the mistreatment of the poor of their times. They were good, but not necessarily more eloquent than Dorothy. It seems she had always been a religious person and just didn't think of herself as such. Meanwhile, 655 miles west in Flint, Michigan, at about the same time, 1937, 75 Unitarians were looking for a home and a minister. Well, there were the Congregationalists in their nice church, and they were having trouble paying the rent. A Unitarian board member who loved history might have said at a meeting discussing their situation, "We Unitarians split with those Congregationalist Christians some 100 years ago because they just couldn't get off that Jesus Christ, the only Son of God thing. I wonder if they have moderated their views enough that we could exist together as a religious people. I mean, without fighting all the time? The answer was yes. The Unitarians moved in and every Sunday listened to the Congregationalist minister, and later, when that Congregationalist minister went away, they all hired a Unitarian minister. In 1941, they became, in writing, the Congregational Unitarian Church. And they had formal membership in both parent organizations. It had taken just 100 years for two bands, one of Christian Congregationalists and the other, mostly non-Christian Unitarians, to get back together ideologically and physically. It probably happened elsewhere in America and in other places in the 30s, but we know it happened here. It was probably pretty unusual. It was made possible worldwide by a lot of good biblical research on the Nazarene, Jesus. Research starting in the 1880s, even a bit before that. Research that showed Jesus didn't think poor people were unclean, and it showed that he was willing to stand up for their cause, even if it got him killed. No small thing. The research also showed he did not consider himself to be the only Son of God. For 50-some years, Americans stewed in that knowledge, and the result was self-avowing agnostic or even atheist Unitarians sitting down with self-avowing Christians because people's ideas about Jesus had changed quite a bit. This Congregationalist Unitarian Church continued on Clifford Street after they could no longer pay the rent of their big old church. Some Unitarians in this group no doubt saw themselves as fans of the Nazarene. Elsewhere in America, Unitarians would not put up with a mention of the name of Jesus in the 30s. Much of the humanist controversy had started, and they decided to throw out Jesus more or less completely. Now, these Flint Unitarians at the Congregationalist Church, they were going to worship Jesus, but they said in their original charter, way back in 1930, that they met in the spirit of Jesus. Not in the spirit of Jesus Christ, which speaks of Christianity's claim of supremacy. They were instead a part of the Nazarene fan club. And unlike Unitarians elsewhere in America, they obviously did not faint when their ministers mentioned Jesus or said the word God. And the Christian Congregationalists in that church, in that liberal era, no doubt figured Jesus might be a little more human than other Christians thought, and that was nothing to fight about. It was a win-win situation. And if this story doesn't ruffle your hair, it's because I'm not telling it right. Here were two kinds of religious people who, since about the year 1800, for 130 years, had quietly hated each other in the name of Jesus. But now, in their liberal age, their age of liberal religion, they were sitting and listening to each other's preachers. They discovered they could agree upon the Jesus who, like Isaiah, came to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim release for the captives. Out in New York, at about the same time, the same thing happened to Dorothy Day, not in a Congregational church, but in a Catholic cathedral. It was on the night when the hunger marchers left Washington, D.C., that Dorothy Day went to the National Shrine at the Catholic University Cathedral to pray. She later wrote, "There I offered up a special prayer, a prayer which came with tears and with anguish, that some way would open up for me to use what talents I possessed for my fellow workers, for the poor." Now, if you're like me, after supporting a protest march of those who seek justice, you go to the nearest restaurant, chow down, then drive home for a long nap. Dorothy, on the other hand, went to a holy place to ask God for an answer to this human misery that made her both sad and angry. She returned the next day to New York, and there waiting for her at her apartment was a guy by the name of Peter Maurin. It soon became obvious that he was God's answer to her prayer. Peter Maurin was a radical, liberal, anarchist Catholic, a renegade religious person in the mold of St. Francis of Assisi, who would not take money for his work of helping the poor eat and live and demand a fair wage. Dorothy said his spirit dominated the rest of her life. He taught Dorothy the full history of the church by going back far in time and speaking of the prophets of Israel as well as the early fathers of the church. In short, he told her about Jesus, the prophet and advocate for the poor. Peter Maurin's friends were Jews, Protestants, agnostics, as well as Catholics, and he found a common ground with them. For the rest of Dorothy's life, she followed the teachings of the church closely, but she did not care if her fellow justice workers were agnostics or atheists, and she did not judge them as irreligious. She discovered, and this comes through clearly in her autobiography, The Long Loneliness, she found that most of her workers, regardless of their religion or lack thereof, they all liked the Sermon on the Mount Jesus, even if they hated the Catholic Church. And it's clear from her autobiography that is all she cared about. Historians have said that Catholicism was never the same again in the United States after Peter Maurin and Dorothy blew the dynamite of the Catholic faith. Their dynamite? Their dynamite was their implicit denial that the divinity of Jesus was the point of the Christian religion. To them, the point of Christianity was to serve people as Jesus served people. Of course, it is likely that you're now thinking, well, what happened to all this satisfaction with the human crusader Jesus here in Flint and throughout America? Where did that progressive Christianity go? We are obviously not sitting here with Congregationalist Christians at the moment. Only their dishes remain. What happened was called neo-orthodoxy, the new orthodoxy. Some just call it traditionalism. Allow me to characterize the age of neo-orthodoxy in the most negative but succinct manner I can without using swear words. Neo-Orthodox theologians, longing for the powerful heyday of Christianity, tried to revive Calvinist Christianity and the idea of biblical inerrancy. To do this, they had to ignore 200 years of research on the Bible. No problem. They took us back to St. Augustine and the belief that people are originally sinful. Neo-Orthodoxy said only the act of Jesus on the cross will save you. People of other religions are toast, and dogma about the virgin birth and bodily resurrection, etc., must be revived. The slow motion effects of this return to traditional Christianity started in the 20s and crept slowly across the nation, as divinity school professors were not hired, or at least not given tenure, if they didn't support this neo-orthodoxy. Candidates for the ministry were corrected or even weeded out if they liked the Sermon on the Mount Jesus a bit too much. It was basically goodbye to the nation's Nazarene fan clubs that had allowed people to sit in churches and revel in the reality of Jesus, the man. By the late 50s, the regressive effects of neo-orthodoxy's traditionalism were really taking hold. The Michigan Congregational Conference was no longer interested in having a church with a bunch of very unorthodox Unitarians in attendance. Then, in 1957, all of the Congregationalist churches in America merged with the more conservative Evangelical Reformed Church to become the United Church of Christ. The Flint Unitarians voted 45-14 to leave the church that had served them so well for 20 years. The new neo-Orthodox UCC creed of that day returned Jesus to his omnipotent Trinitarian glory, even though every well-educated minister and layperson of that day knew that Jesus had never asked for such a thing. The Unitarians knew they had to go it alone, and as our church history reads, and they became the Unitarian Church of Flint. While a few members left the church at this time, many of the original Congregationalists remained with the Unitarian Church. Dishes imprinted First Congregational Church are still being used by the Unitarian Church of Flint. Not so sure when that history was written, but now we use mostly paper because heating the water to wash the dishes, who can do the math to figure out which is environmentally more sound, using old dishes and washing them or using paper. But they're in the cabinets, 2 of them. A lot of dishes. Eventually, the more Christian members of the now defunct Congregational Unitarian Church went to an historic Baptist church that later became known as the non-denominational Woodside. As far as I know, no one really wanted the dishes. We did not steal them. Put simply, they were abandoned relics over a war about Jesus of Nazareth. They speak of the failings not of the Nazarene, but of those theologians, priests, and professors who just had to have the only God on the block. If they had read history honestly and honored it, this unnecessary international theological train wreck wouldn't have happened. And be of good cheer. This story has a happy ending because there is in this history a great wisdom to be found. The history of the stealing of the real Jesus, read in the light of new events, shows clearly the path that we should follow. The age of neo-orthodoxy is way over, and other attempts to revive traditional Christianity, that is, supremacy Christianity, they're not working. It is dying a natural death caused by the profound, simple fact that people just aren't buying it anymore. This is best explained by a celebrated philosopher I've mentioned before, Gianni Vattimo, a good friend of the Pope. Vattimo has attracted worldwide attention by noting that people no longer believe the strong claims of Christianity, such as Jesus is the only Son of God and the only way to salvation. They see such claims for what they are, a religion vying to be the supreme religion in a way that no longer serves the good. Vattimo's observations are backed up by recent Pew and Gallup polls that show conclusively that a strong majority of people don't buy the big claims of Christianity any longer. But they do believe just what Gianni Vattimo models predicts, They believe, as he says, charity is the new God. People want ethics and values and moral directions in their religion. Like Dorothy Day and the Congregational Unitarians of Flint of the 50s, and millions of other people over the past 2,023 years, they want the Sermon on the Mount Jesus. They want the man who loved and fought for the underdogs all the way. This thinking is now taking on a body in the form of the 30-year-old movement called, big surprise, progressive Christianity. Research by the Public Religion Research Group, the PRRG, a very large organization. That research shows that 35 million Americans can be called consistently progressive Christians. Those who are building a church for these people have written down the core values of progressive Christianity, values that sound a lot like our own. One of them being, we don't have a creed because creeds are bad. Does that sound familiar at all to any of you? A soldier in this movement, and one to be reckoned with, is Guthrie Graves Fitzsimmons. He was a fellow at the Center for American Progress, and I won't try to cite all of his many qualifications to be a leader, but a New York Times writer addressing evangelical Christians said that progressive Christianity in America is a sleeping giant, and Guthrie Graves Fitzsimmons is their press secretary. Consider yourself warned. I would describe the theme of his book, Just Faith, in one brief sentence. We are taking Jesus back, so get out of the road. He shows that many of our nation's greatest social reforms, women's rights, the abolition of slavery, civil rights, and many, many more, were won by progressive Christians who modeled themselves after the Jesus of history, not after the Jesus who putatively saves believers for some later heaven. He mentions Dorothy Day and Martin Luther King in the same breath and shows convincingly that we need more such reformers who act in the name of what is holy. Yes, he thinks America needs a religion in an age when religion seems passé, uncool. But we nevertheless need a new progressive religion to hold up our highest values. The evangelical traditionalist Christianity that thinks Donald Trump and his values are okay only makes clear the opposite direction Christianity, the dominant religion of our nation, must take. And here we are, we UUs, also wanting to change the world, all 187,000 of us. And that includes children enrolled in education. My friends, we are 0.3% of the American population and shrinking. As I'm fond of noting, there are about 4 times as many Baptists in Dallas, Texas alone than there are UUs in our whole nation. Let's see. Perhaps we should look around and see if we can find some like-minded religious allies who also think America still needs some religion. Well, there are 35 million progressive Christians in America who sound a lot like us. Maybe our history has made us ready to be with people who just want the Nazarene as their main man, but who are also open to other saviors too. I bet today's progressive Christians would love a good service on the Tao Te Ching or on our other many other UU things. We could do many great things together. Maybe we should have them over, show them our old dishes, and tell them the story. Thank you.
Now is our time for generosity. We know that the financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are very grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather do a greater good for our world than we could ever do alone. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation. We invite you to join us as we take the collection by placing your offering in the basket at the back of the church as you leave, or by making an online gift at uuflint.org. And thank you for all the gifts you give.
Our closing words are from Barrow Dunham. And now, since the struggle deepens, since evil abides, and good does not yet prosper, let us gather what strength we have, what confidence and valor, that our small victories may end in triumph, and the world awaited be a world attained.
And let us extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. believe that.